Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on culture and team, which is the second topic in our People series. For anyone who doesn't know me by now, I'm Patricia Kingston from Tourism NI. Today we'll be hearing from Feargal McCormack from PKF-FPM, who many of you I'm sure will recognise from delivering a number of previous TED webinar sessions. We're delighted once again to also be offering a limited number of short one-to-one calls with Feargal and his team for any NI-based tourism and hospitality industry registered to attend this session. So I'll be explaining a little bit more about that later on. As you know, this webinar is being delivered as part of Tourism NI's ongoing Tourism Enterprise Development Programme. This year's TED programme has been designed to continue to help the tourism industry here survive and recover as we start to move forward from the events of the past year. We're continually reviewing and evolving the programme based on industry needs, so please keep letting us know what topics you'd like to see in future. As always, you'll be receiving a link to an evaluation form following today's session, so do be sure to complete that so we can continue to tailor our programme of events to your needs. Alongside the TED webinars, you can also access a whole range of support materials on tourismni.com and covid19.tourismni.com, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. I will be asking Feargal some of your questions at the end, so please be sure to pop these into the question box in your control panel during the presentation. I'll pick up as many of these as I can with Feargal following his presentation. So now, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce Feargal McCormack for the main presentation.
Thank you very much, Patricia. And as Patricia said, my name is Feargal McCormack. I'm the Managing Director of PKF-FPM Accountants Limited. And the topic of our webinar today is culture and team, recognizing indeed that people and life is all about people and relationships. And what I hope to do is to share with you the PKF-FPM experience and observations over the past 30 years in terms of people and culture and team. However, at the outset, may I make it very clear that I would never be so arrogant to suggest that the PKF-FPM way is the right way. Rather, it's the one I'm familiar with, and I can draw from it examples which can be applied in many other circumstances. And naturally, I'll share with you many of the mistakes we've made along the way as well. So the webinar is being delivered as part of Tourism Northern Ireland's new Tourism Enterprise Programme. And as some of you will know who have joined me for previous webinars, I propose to use the slides as an aide-memoire, which means that they'll be available in their totality after the webinar. However, it may mean that I may not necessarily refer to every slide individually. And it is recognised that the coronavirus pandemic in particular, and obviously in recent weeks Brexit, has placed extraordinary demands on leaders in business, and especially in the tourism and hospitality sector, which is obviously currently still in lockdown. This webinar will endeavour to highlight that a priority emphasis on business culture and team and caring for your team members, we believe, will yield net benefits and enhance the commercial sustainability of your business. It's fair to say at the outset that effective teamwork doesn't just happen. It requires practice, skills and vision. And I'm delighted that Tourism and I have again decided that it's acknowledged that one-to-one mentoring may be available to enhance knowledge and understanding of specific elements of today's webinar. Indeed, I must say, I enjoyed some of my one-to-one mentoring post the last resilience webinar. I think we all appreciate that life can be challenging in the extreme, and the past 12 months have been extremely turbulent. The current rollout, thankfully, of the vaccination programme here in Northern Ireland is creating exciting hope. And while we're all yearning for the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that will come in time, I suggest to you this is also a moment perhaps for business leaders to seize the opportunity to build a better future for their people and their organisations. But obviously, we're in no way suggesting that we should not recognise the tremendous human cost of the pandemic and the impact on people's mental and physical well-being. Certainly in this particular lockdown 3 does seem to have had a bigger impact in terms of workflow, whether it's homeschool teaching and working, I'm not sure, young kids, but certainly we're experiencing that people are finding it a little bit more difficult this time. And however, we would suggest that if we carry out our work with care, attention and kindness, we believe it does deliver positive results. And there'll be constant themes we'll be coming back to. And if you think about it, your business culture is the glue that joins everything together. And it's sometimes described as how things are done when no one else is around. And you know, it's fair to say that the authentic leaders, they create a safe place of belonging and a purpose that creates an environment of caring, energy, creativity, quality, and indeed collaboration. Now, believe it or not, this morning, prior to finalizing my slides, I happened to be talking to a young lady called Anna Mae Fitzpatrick, and I told her I was talking to her through business, and I told her I happened to be doing this webinar this afternoon to later on today to the tourism and hospitality sector in Northern Ireland. Now, Anna Mae, for example, currently she's the principal lead dancer for Riverdance. She's age 20, and already at the tender age of 20, she's originally from Navan, by the way, she has performed in over 30 countries around the world. So I said to Anna Marie, if you didn't mind, I said, Anna Marie, I'm doing this presentation today. What do you think of culture and team? What does culture and team mean to you in your context of Riverdance and being employed by Riverdance? And being, again, hard to believe, the principal lead dancer. She said 3 key factors, and I thought this was amazing. Just straight back at me. She said, 1, open-minded, and that she said, values and principles. 2, she said, communications, a clear understanding of what is expected and a desire to exceed the audience. In her, she calls it audience, we would call customers' expectations. And finally, the third key element, the key factor she thought the culture and team was teamwork. And what I asked her, what do you mean by that? And she said, highly motivated individuals inspiring each other in a friendly, competitive environment with a common vision. Yes, there's a lot of competitive competition, but it's peer, it's friendly peer competition. So I thought that was an amazing, to be honest, I thought I got an insight into the success of Riverdance in that 5-minute, 2-minute conversation actually with this subject matter. Now, I then went on to say, I thought I'd just test her a bit, and I said, in terms of hospitality experience, I said, where would you rate the top 3 cities in the world that you've performed in over the last few years? And it was interesting, by the way, she mentioned Belfast. She didn't do Riverdance in Belfast, but she performed at Titanic in Belfast, and she said it was one of actually her warmest receptions she got. And she was very fond memories of it. But she went on to say, if you're asking me in the context of Riverdance, she said, 3 cities stand out, no hesitation. I said, what are they? She said Shanghai, Chicago, and Beijing. Now, I didn't ask her why, but I just thought that was interesting in the context of today's presentation. And I think that what it did highlight to me even then, and I had sort of thought some of these slides out at that stage, that basically we need to put people and not process at the core of our strategy. And you know, you think about it, business success comes from keeping employees engaged, supportive, and productive. There was a 20-year-old, and don't ask me how it happened, but remember, she had nobody beside her to prompt her. She gave me those straight answers back. So there was very clear communication. She knew what the vision of the Riverdance was. She knew what her role in it was, which is amazing. I have to say, very impressive. So what we're really saying is, yes, we must embrace technology to complement and enhance the capacity and capabilities of people, but the two must complement each other. And if I may say, in observing some organizations that appear currently to be putting their focus solely on technology in adapting their work processes, I think some organizations that do that are actually bypassing their most essential and valuable assets, namely their people. Now, I already explained that I'm using my own experiences just to highlight some issues. In terms of the webinar outputs, I hope that by the end of the webinar you have a greater understanding that people is all of the business, and indeed I would suggest life is all about culture, people, and relationships, but the importance of motivating and empowering your team. And what do we mean by team? Certainly in our organization, TEAM stands for working together, everybody achieves more. Shared responsibility and internal communications. And believe it or not, that's very important. We're going to hopefully highlight to you that internal communications, if you take that Riverdance experience, it was the internal communications that informed her. Internal communications in my own personal belief are actually more important than external communications. that winning teams do the ordinary things with extraordinary consistency, commitment, passion, and focus. We'll try and highlight that caring for staff yields net benefits, and we'll talk briefly about the employee brand, and we'll also talk about the employee value proposition. So within our own organization, to be honest, we ask and don't tell, we listen and don't talk, and that's because we very simply we think God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we believe that that is important to build business success with our staff and indeed our clients. And we think that by listening to what matters to our clients and our staff most, it helps us then to solve the problem. If we're stupid enough to jump in at the start, we then can't find out what the problem was. And it also helps us, to be honest, to face the challenges and indeed increase the possibilities that every time we're in touch that we can actually address some of the solutions. So I suppose we summarize that in a motto that we don't care how much you know until we know how much you care. When we were founded as a one-man operation just over 29 years ago, believe it or not, that's what we wrote down on a sheet of paper as our ethos and vision going forward. And what that's really saying is, in very simple terms, that we would be suggesting that you need to develop a deep-rooted connection with people in order to drive your business to success levels that you desire. And you know, if you think of just as BMW believe that their brand is associated with joy, we believe that our brand, the PKF-FPM brand, is associated with a desire to serve and to care and to deliver service excellence. Now, this isn't about PKF-FPM. What I'm just trying to illustrate here is that whatever your organization, whatever your company is, what is your brand associated? What do you want people to associate your business or your organization with? And certainly our value proposition to clients is that to make sure we're passionate about leveraging technology and tools to obviously to provide value-added services to our clients and to be their hopefully their business advisor of choice, and to help the businesses and indeed the people we work with become more profitably wealthy and successful, and therefore achieve their lifetime aspirations. Now, for business in the tourism and hospitality sector, again, it may be totally different. It could be the experiences that people are giving, but remember, it's not the piece of food you make. It's not the bicycle they ride on. It's the experience. It's the outcome of the food. It's the outcome of riding the bicycle. It's the outcome of participating in event tourism. And certainly we believe that a family ethos is important. And our experience is that if you invest time and develop a deep-rooted connection with work colleagues' personal lives, that this can help them maintain a healthy work-life balance and indeed overcome personal issues that may have an impact on their daily life and indeed work. We truly believe that it's up to leaders to set a caring ethos at the very highest levels and show their personal commitment to their teams in everything they do. And the reason we say this is we honestly believe that this leads to a happier, more highly motivated staff, but also secures better outcomes for the business, and it helps you achieve your goals long term. So what we're really saying is that we're focusing on a quotation I have used in previous webinars, but it's one that certainly inspires and motivates me. It was by the Harvard University professor Bill Walsh, who said that the most important attribute of any organization is the way it treats its people. And yes, leadership is all about having the ability to influence. And the most important thing, and we've said this in previous webinars, but that's why these all come back and complement and join up with each other. The most important thing is purpose. And that's really, to put it simply, that's the why in business. And without a vision, you can't get high performance on a consistent basis. You can't get the culture right, and you can't get the team outputs right. And what we would suggest is that values are pivotal in cultivate performance. It's all about servicing and caring. Put that a different way. It's about earning trust. So we endeavor to share and talk about, in our cases, our practices and personal goals with the people we're sitting alongside. And we do that, to be honest with you, for 2 good reasons. One, we believe that the more you talk about your goals, the more actually you all become committed to them. And secondly, as you verbalize your goals to others, you gain more clarity in your own mind of what you're really trying to achieve. You're reinforcing what you're trying to achieve. So with clarity comes certainty, and with certainty comes confidence. And it's our experience that the act of talking about your goals is powerful and profound. Now, to be honest with you, you say, what does that mean to me? Well, I'll give you a simple example. In our own organisation, every member of staff has what we call a core vision card. And why do they have that? I'll tell you why. Because we can never determine when a business opportunity might arise, but it could only be a half a minute or a 1 minute opportunity. So what we would say to people is now and again, keep this in your handbag or in your wallet or whatever. And if you need to reflect on it or refresh it, pay a visit to the bathroom or somewhere, have a quick look out and come back and keep the conversation going. It's a refresher of the core values and core focus, etc., that the business is trying to achieve. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the next slide, just to say that we've had an exciting journey over the past 15 years. And really, what we're really saying is that human relationships and commitment are really important, and they do interlink with each other. And if we think about it, addressing the extraordinary business challenges of the past 12 months and the immediate future has required a renewed commitment to trust. And again, would suggest to you that the trust is the foundation of stakeholder capitalization, including employee and client or customer engagement. So as a result, we've endeavored, and I'm not saying we've got it right every time, but we've endeavored and really worked hard at this to be open and transparent and approach the decisions. And I'm very conscious of many in the tourism and hospitality sector who have done this, and by the way, by doing it, have been partly amazed by the commitment that their employees, many now in furlough, have shown them, and maybe some that have been made redundant, by acknowledging the openness of how the communications has been with them. So we've ensured that's in the concept of the practice's long-term success and stability. We've used a people-centered lens in our decision-making. We've endeavored to continue to hopefully maintain our service to clients and emphasizing quality. And finally, to be fair, we've tried to continue to transform the organization to blend people with technology. And yes, we are introducing more technology all the time, more digitalization actually, to create a smarter work environment and experience. Now, it's fair to say, yes, we have had to engineer and have engineered indeed our business model, but by leading with empathy, hopefully, and honesty, and encouraging an open and candid dialogue, hopefully we've agreed an agile forward strategy to achieve our collective aspirations where we want to be. And if you think about it in terms of business and all your businesses, imagination in business is the company's vision, the organization's vision. And successful and sustainable businesses or organizations, they need to focus on the future more than the past. You've heard that in many different ways. Somebody said, keep your eyes out the front window. Don't be looking through the rear mirror, or the mirror to the rear back window of the car. Look out the front window. And if you think about it further, what you're really saying here is success is when reality catches up to our imagination. So what is my role? I happen to be the managing director president. Well, I see my role to, a bit like conductor of an orchestra, to be honest with you, to lead, to mobilize, and to energize our most vital resources, our people, and to foster a trust and business development culture that inspires confidence and seeks out opportunities and indeed supports greatness among team members to ensure that everyone is rowing in the same direction for the greater good. Yes, certainly diversity and inclusion are embedded within our culture. Certainly we try to give strategic direction for an agile strategy. We happen to use in our organization a thing called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, and there's a thing called the Vision Traction Organizer. I think I referred to this in an earlier webinar, where on one page we have just one page summarizes our business plan, core values, core focus, our various targets, and indeed what we think we'd like it to look like. We certainly like to encourage resilience by embracing lateral thinking and listening to people. Health and well-being, without doubt, the last few years have become a far greater emphasis in the organization, and trying to create, to be honest with you, a bit of fun in the office environment. And the real reason for all this has been to future-proof the sustainability of the business by satisfying today's needs, as we've said before, I think in a previous webinar, the resilience webinar, without endangering future generations. So our goal is said to foster diversity and inclusion, to basically to recognize that business is played primarily in the mind, and the character triumphs over talent. And if you think about it, winning takes talent, but to repeat it takes character. And really, That growing emphasis on people and culture management initiatives, is reflected in many ways. Whether we do an annual staff attitude survey, 62 questions, I think, every year since 1986. And believe it or not, as a result of what's called an opportunity for improvement, somebody heard about or suggested this to me, we introduced and we still do it actually, in June 2015, a weekly pulse survey, where actually on a score of 1 to 10 every Thursday morning, and you're reminded on a Friday if you haven't done it, you have to give a score of 1 to 10. You have the option of your comment simply on how's it going, HIG, how's it going. Now, believe it or not, that has been unbelievable. If you had told me that how important that would be, and the insight that would give me into the business, the results are conducted independently, and I get them every Friday at 5 o'clock with a firm in Nottingham. But if you had told me the impact that has, and you can see here, it's only the trends is interesting, but the trends have been positive since 2015. And interestingly, since we first started that survey, believe it or not, the highest score was 9.1, which was actually just recently on the 10th of December 2020, in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Brexit uncertainty. So certainly we have found that it hasn't been a coincidence that as we've increased health and well-being initiatives, our outputs have also increased as an organisation. And part of that is, to be fair, about 5 years ago, and again, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but we took a conscientious decision, which at the time some people, even within our organisation, said, you must be mad. We wrote down, one of our interns, we do an annual staff day, we wrote down that we were changing our policy from practice brand to employee brand. And what that in very simple terms meant, we decided that from henceforth our first priority was talent management, because we concluded, and maybe we're wrong, but that if we get the right people, develop them and retain them, we'll be a better business. And if we're a better business, then we'll secure more business. Certainly in terms of culture, your organization, any organization, it's really important to focus on culture. Because you think of why, because culture gives you identity. And you must have that. The girl Anna Mae Fitzpatrick, it's amazing. 20-year-old, and I asked her, what did she mean by team and culture? I was unbelievably impressed. She came back to me quick. You could see that was interwoven within the organization. Certainly a strong culture does attract better talent. And more importantly, it retains the talent. And you know within hospitality how important that is. You don't keep retraining staff. And particularly, albeit that some of your staff is seasonal, some of them are unbelievably loyal and they're always there for you each year. The image is also important from a culture point of view. It does help that brand identity, or in our case, the employee brand. Now, again, we just try to be a wee bit different. There's nothing perfect. But we do try to differentiate. We keep saying to our people, we do want to be different. We want them to be different, to accept responsibility for that difference. And emphasis is definitely on leadership, shared responsibility, and internal communications. Now, within that is that whole concept of continuous improvement, and some may even call it lean, being, trying to minimize waste and achieve continuous improvements. However, if you think about it, we've already highlighted what we mean by team. What we mean by the team, we call it a team PKF-FPM. That means working together, everybody achieves more. And if you think about it, that's common sense. The old Japanese proverb, I think it translates into, none of us are as smart as all of us. So we just try to develop not just exceptional accountants, God help the world of the boring accountants, but more importantly, we want rounded, exceptional business leaders. And if you think about that, your business, take that back to your business, whatever nature your business is in the tourism and hospitality sector. How do we have rounded people? How do we have emotional intelligence? And you think about it, some of your best people, you have no doubt, once they get sector knowledge in any other area, they'd also be brilliant, because it's their attitude, it's their mindset. It's basically the way they want to do to help people. Now, certainly in my own case, to be honest, I'd say in years gone by, I may have been leading most of the time, but I can tell you now, there's quite a few days now I'm following, and that's the culture that's evolving in organizations today. There's leaders at all levels, and sometimes some of the greatest ideas and best leadership comes from the bottom and not the top. So really our motivation in life and in business should be, I would argue, to serve and to help others. And what do I mean by that? I'll come back to that in a second. And wanting to help others to achieve achieve their dreams and quality of life aspirations. That happens to be our case, but in your case, it could be to have a fantastic experience and joy from a meal. It could be to have a tremendous day's activity. You can go through it all. It could be playing golf at Portrush, the experience of that. But ultimately, is to deliver, if you think about it, what is your value proposition? Your value proposition must focus on benefits and results to the customer, the client, not to you. To deliver results and positive change in terms of impact and solution for existing and potential clients. Now, I just want to go back to the last slide for 1 second, because if you notice, we talked about internal communications there. And believe it or not, in my view, internal communications are far more important than external communications. And as a result, in 29 years, we've never had a brochure. And the reason for that is, and I have it a later slide, but I'm going to deal with it now because I think it's important, that I believe your staff are your ambassadors or your assassins. And I'll give you a very simple example. Many years ago, as a young trainee chartered accountant with KPMG in Belfast, who I must say I had a fantastic experience with, great firm. I met one of my friends afterwards in Robinson's opposite the Europe Hotel. And this friend happened to work in one of the other big four. And to be honest with you, he called his managing partner that evening, being very polite here, but all the so-and-sos of the day. And I remember going home that night and thinking, how could that guy go in on Monday morning, work well, and more importantly, maybe encourage other people to come and buy services off his firm, if he wasn't an ambassador for the business, if he wasn't so proud to work for the business and for his managing partner. So that's what I mean by saying your staff are your ambassadors or your assassins. And if they're not selling the business for you every day, if they don't feel comfortable, if they're saying, and you hear it all, I've heard it, actually I heard it, believe it or not, in the webinar I did the other day, I heard somebody make a comment, oh, so-and-so, so-and-so, and this actually was one of the most senior colleagues. I couldn't believe it. So you've got to make sure you get the internal communications right. And Riverdance don't know it, but they got the internal communications right. That girl, Anna May Fitzpatrick, she told me all the right things, yet she didn't know she was going to even be asked them. It was internally woven into her communications. So it's fair to say that it was Winston Churchill, I think, who said, you make a living out of what you get, but you make a life out of what you give. And if you think about it, St. Francis put it in a different way. He said, it is in giving we receive. I think he also said, didn't he, that the door to happiness opens outwards. But whatever way you look at it, my experience in life has been, it's taken me a long time to come to this conclusion. Unfortunately, 60 years, maybe in the last decade, that I really started to appreciate this. But in my view, people fall into two categories. Those who give you energy and those who take away your energy. And I've got to be fair and say that I haven't found anybody that took away my energy that eventually turned around to give me energy. So I believe if people don't fit into your culture, whatever your culture is, but if they don't fit into it within 6 weeks, they'll never fit into it. And why have them with you 3 or 4 years later? You're better suggesting very honestly to them, look, this is not for you. You could go to the very top, but not in this organization, in your own business or in somebody else's organization. And if you think about it, behind every successful business, and I'm trying to keep stressing this, that leaders are at all levels of the organization. There are many great leaders. And it's the leaders who give a company the direction, who motivate and inspire the workforce, even in the face of adversity. And they see the opportunity, they see the positives. We talk about it later, we talk about the last day, the positive, the potential growth mindset as opposed to the fixed or negative mindset. And good leaders, in my experience, display balance, and they know when to push and when to pull. And they commit and back themselves with confidence. And you think about it, there are certain traits that are common among most businesses, certainly most successful businesses. And I actually believe it's very simple. They're the 3 C's, nothing sophisticated here: courage, character, and commitment. And I think if you look at most leaders in whatever sphere of life you would want to be role models, and I think you'll find that those 3 characters. And certainly in terms of our own people, we're looking for a variety of, to be honest with you, of what would you say, of values among the team. And this has changed, I would say, over the years. And certainly, I think the one at the very end now is one of the most important. And I'm not sure it would have been there 20 years ago. Tolerance and humility. But in the current work environment, it's fundamental. So what do we mean by humility? Well, Humility allows us to ask the simple question, how can we do things better? Think of the culture. How can we do things better? Automatically, you're in the front foot. You're looking for continuous improvement. You're not blaming. There's no blame game. And humility begins, if you think about it, at the level of interpersonal communications, enabling an interrogative, highly facilitated learning environment in which no one has all the answers. Each individual but is invited to contribute solutions to the challenges being posed. Now, we believe that's a key component of building sustainable competitive advantage through cultural cohesion. And certainly, if I'm being honest, over 30 years of working with and observing businesses, I think this is one of the most important things. A closed workplace does not work. You should always be trying to encourage people to contribute. Certainly, I've always, 30 years in business, I've never shut my door. My door is always open. And my home number, you want to check it, is in the book. I don't mind who rings me. I'm more than willing to take phone calls. And if you think about it, that culture of our DNA of humility is really, really important, because it ultimately leads to innovation. Go back to that Japanese proverb: none of us are as smart as all of us. You want 20 brains are far better than one. Increased self-knowledge and greater character. And thus, in our organization, every agenda and every meeting, we have a thing called OFIs, opportunities for improvement. And it's amazing how much that focuses the mind. What do you think we can do better? Oh, so such client said this, or I was observing something else. I read a very good article in the paper last week. I wonder, should we try this? And certainly in my own case, to be fair, my life has been a journey of learning and hopefully leadership experiences. So the quality of leadership, more than any other factor, in our belief, and in my certain observations, is the key factor in determining the success or failure of an organization. And as I've tried inherently to hint over the last few minutes, leadership is not about position or hierarchy. It's about attitude and the definite characteristics, some of which we highlighted in the previous slide, whether it be vision, passion, whether it be teamwork, whether it be resilience, whether it be tolerance, whether it be humility. But really, at the current environment we're in at present, and hopefully the business is going to start again in many tourism and hospitality businesses, really it's a time for real leaders to stand up and deliver. And I am amazed the more I talk, and I spend most of my day talking to clients, I am amazed the number who have said that a comment to me similar to what I'm going to say to you now, that they've been surprised by some of the people in their organization and some of the people that's come to the top in these very difficult weeks and months, and maybe some who their higher expectations of have not been delivered. So certainly in our business, we're a people business. People are employed to provide personal services to other people, and that's very similar to many businesses in the tourism and hospitality sector. And if you think about it, I keep coming back to this internal communications, this ambassador or assassin. If people don't believe in your business, they won't buy into it, and the practice will have a limited future. The worst thing you can ever hear is somebody out of the work environment criticizing your business you work in. That's a disaster. It says all the wrong signals. Networking certainly is very important, and without doubt is changing in the current environment, the significant growth in Zoom and Teams and webinars, etc. We have certainly had to create personal moments and differentiation in the online world over the last 9 months, 9 to 10 months. And just again, if I'm being honest with you, your LinkedIn profile or the profile of your business online is now very important. And we talk about it now. We encourage staff to embrace networking because we think it actually builds up their confidence as well. In the past, maybe that was all about nudging, going to events and all. It's now changing, and probably it's now a lot more high tech. And we're saying now it's not only high tech, but it's high touch. It's how we actually use technology to help us make contact with people. And in that whole area, concentration and remaining focus is very high, because you can have the raspberry jam effect and be spread all over the place. You have to focus it because we all have only limited time and limited resources. And it's fair at the outset to appreciate, we talked about communications, as that young lady Anna Mae Fitzpatrick. But if you think about it, communications and integrity are the sisters of leadership. To be liked is not the most important thing. Rather, it's far more important to be respected. Remember we talked about that before? Leaders influence. You don't need to be liked, you need to be respected. And every experience for leaders should be a learning experience. Indeed, I have an old boss who used to say to me, a leader should never worry about the scars on their back. A leader should be shockproof. So what we're really saying is that astute leaders are emotionally intelligent, and they know what and how they are communicating, what being the and they know by the language, and they also know by the tone, because tone can make so many things. And it's also important to remember, to be fair, that composition, empathy, and honesty can be very apparent. Those non-verbal things, and we come into that in a second, because one of the things we've certainly found using virtual communications is that regular, like we used to do weekly staff updates, staff briefings to all the staff, 120 staff virtually. Now we cut that back to bi-weekly, and ironically, when we cut it back to bi-weekly, we also reduced the length of them. And the reason for that is we found that regular and little information is better than infrequent and big information. And leaders have to be conscious that what is essential is often invisible. It's the impact of non-verbal communication can be very important. Unfortunately, my wife says now and again, when I look up to heaven, oh, she says, you've done it again. I hope I don't do it too often. I'll keep a tea cooked for me. But the point I'm making is that non-visual, non-verbal communication is equally very important. So always be conscious of that, and how you make people feel. And really, I think you may have heard me say this before, but I think it's very true. People may not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. Very important point. And that's why, if you think about it, quite often complaints can be turned around into a very big positive, particularly in tourism hospitality sector. Your man Paddy Fitzpatrick used to own the hotel, nowadays the Fitzpatrick Hotel Group down in Dublin. I remember going to a talk, actually I was involved in doing a bit of business at one stage. I remember going to a talk again, and he explained that his biggest marketing tool he fell across by chance, and that every time there was a complaint, he personally dealt with it. And the person lived in Bangor. He got in his car there, and then he didn't ring them. He drove to Bangor, and then he'd say to them, "Are you in?" And if they weren't in, he'd ring them the next day and say, "I'm sorry, I drove down to see you." But whatever, he'd get the impression across to you that your complaint meant so much to him. Quite often, he told me that he'd give people a voucher or something, and those people would ultimately become his most loyal recurring clients. So he turned a difficult situation by using non-verbal as well as verbal communications. And we've highlighted before, and this, I don't make any apology for this is one of the core slides I would like ideally to put on every webinar presentation. And it is recognizing that there is a difference between leadership and power. And that's because a successful leader is determined by the output of his or her team and not by their personal inputs. The great Martin Naughton, who I was fortunate to serve on a board with for 7 or 8 years, he had a fantastic saying. He rarely ever, he didn't realize it, he rarely ever went through a meeting that he didn't at some time say once or twice, "If you cannot delegate, you're a nuisance." And by God, was he through. Think about that. And look at your own teams. Think about that. If you cannot delegate, you're a nuisance, because you're not empowering people. You're not enhancing the outputs. You know, you don't want any business where the bus knocks you down, there is no business. You must develop the power of the team. And then that adds value into the business as well. So leadership comes from within. We talked about that in the previous slide. It must be respected and must be recognized by others. And as we've said before, sometimes the best leadership and the best leaders lift themselves out of the business for a short time, even for 5 minutes, and work on the business rather than be busy fools all the time in the business. And obviously, in the context of what we're saying today, and we've said in recent webinars, please try and disengage from negativity. And tell your work, please, well, not tell, but certainly encourage your work colleagues to disengage from negativity. So really what we've been trying to say in terms of culture, people, team, is that leadership in the corporate setting is centered on the ability to deliver change, because only adaptive organizations will endure in today's rapidly changing business environment. And God knows we don't know how much is still changing, and it's really requiring us to be unbelievably agile to prepare for the future. However, I do believe that there are fundamental culture changes taking place in the broader business environment. And one of them is that ethics should be embedded at the heart of your organization. We all should take responsibility and equally ask our work colleagues to take responsibility and hold themselves accountable and expect the same from others. You know, in the past, maybe the philosophy or culture was, can I do it? Yes, I can. I think the culture now going forward is, should I do it? and we'll only know maybe 3 or 4 years afterwards. Yes, we've got to treat people with respect and dignity, building strong, trusting relationships, both internal to our organization and external. And we must definitely try, and it's not easy, folks. Can I tell you, I've experienced all the ups and downs as well as everybody else. This isn't easy, but you've got to try and inspire confidence among your stakeholders. We must all be prepared to be agile and to change with changing circumstances, because there are no shortcuts. With the will, you can do almost everything. Without the will, you can do nothing. And remember, you can only control what's within your own control, but it's your response that's more important. So certainly we think differentiation and taking risk is important, and we encourage our people to endeavour, and you heard me say earlier on, to be different and unique and to think outside the box. And we believe the reason why we do that is we think that this entrepreneurial spirit is consistent with our own firm's clients, many of whom are business owners who either manufacture or make or deliver unique products and indeed services. And I think I've said this in a previous Tourism NI webinar, but I'll say it again. And think about this. Intelligent failure must be acknowledged in a mature society. Indeed, if you look at some of the most successful businesses in the world, even if you look at Dennis O'Brien and you're going to come success, look at the ones that failed first. They've all had, Michael Ryan and Ryan, they've all come very close or have either failed once and come back. And they've learned so much from getting close to failure or actually failing. So I think this needs to be allowed. Many people are afraid to fail. Now, personally, I think that is a wrong culture. And certainly we discourage this culture because we think the person who never failed never actually got anywhere. So if you think about it, it's true. We don't like to lose, but we shouldn't be afraid to lose. And there is a difference. We don't like it, but hopefully we won more than we lost. And certainly, I don't know about you, but we have certainly learned far more from our mistakes than our good decisions. So part of what I've been trying to say also today is, to be honest with you, that one of the most common weaknesses I find in observing businesses is whenever you go to meet them and you say, well, what do you do or whatever? And before you know it, they're in talking about unbelievable detail about the features of their service or their product. Where really they should be benefit driven, because it's people buy your services, your products because of the benefits they expect them to deliver to them, to give them. So what I'm saying to you is that this is quite an important culture to get across to your staff, so that at all times they're not thinking about themselves, they're not thinking about your organization, but they're thinking of how your organization can deliver positive benefits and outputs to your customers. And in my simple philosophy, maybe there's more, you can let me know, but I think that there's only 3 benefits. And sit down and ask yourself, if you have different types of service and products, can you define these are? Because I think they fall into 3 categories. Those that save you time, those that make you or lose your money, and those, to be honest with you, and think about this, that gives you ease of mind. Ease of mind obviously also includes all those areas of enjoyment and satisfaction. So I think what we're trying to get across here in the course of this webinar is to say that winning teams do the ordinary things with extraordinary consistency, commitment, passion, and focus. And you know my love for sport. I think if you've been watching any of my previous webinars, and keep watching successful teams in sport, I think you can apply the parallels to business. So I think prior to COVID-19, and certainly I believe post-COVID-19 again, when thankfully we hopefully get up and trading very soon, there are 3 significant challenges facing modern organizations in terms of culture and team. And these are how to manage millennials and the newest Generation Z people, dealing with environmental uncertainty, and indeed managing change. Now, I'm not going to go into managing change too much because, to be honest, we covered it in the resilience webinar before. But in terms of millennials and the newest Generation Z, they're young, they're vibrant, they seem to be experts at personal branding through social media. Look at your own kids if you have them, you'll find they all want the brands. But they are demanding in the workplace a new approach from management. They have an emphasis certainly on work-life balance, and it's one of the interesting things that we may see and we may have to address is with a number of our staff being off, particularly in the tourism hospitality sector, on furlough. Will they be willing to work some of the unsocial hours required at peak times or to meet the demands of the industry when it gets up and running again? They're certainly very much into social responsibility and ethical policy. I don't remember 20 years ago ever being asked about things regarding supply chains and people and the environment and collaboration as opposed to hierarchical structures. I can tell you now, it's quite regular in the interviews I do that some of those issues come up. And for some older managers, older generations, they find this difficult to comprehend because they themselves took a different approach during their formative business careers. And the reality is that new structures and procedures and business operations are required to meet the needs of the current workforce. A wider span of control, increased delegation, increased responsibility, shorter change of command and teamwork are essential to motivate the millennials. There must also be, again, an emphasis on regular coaching, regular feedback. They don't want to wait till the end of the year. They want to be told there and then how they're getting on. Discussions, opportunities for promotion, career paths, they call it, and a people and culture approach. So in terms of environmental uncertainty, there's no doubt about it that the world is continuing to evolve and unforeseen circumstances do appear to be arising at an alarming rate. The economy, social demographics, politics, God, who would ever have envisaged what we're seeing in America just at present? Laws, growing regulation, and climate change. They're all some examples of the complex challenges that are now facing modern organizations. But remember, every challenge is also an opportunity. And the business and organizations who concentrate on their own performance whilst demonstrating peripheral vision are normally the ones that are the most successful. And I'm not going to go into this today because I covered it in the previous webinar, but there's a very useful tool to look at opportunities and try. It's called PESTEL. Put it under 6 headings: political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal or regulations. And look at how those things all impact upon your business. And really, what we're really saying here is that it really is important for a leader and an organization to remain flexible. I wish I had been aware of this maybe 30 years ago. It took me a while to learn this. But I think it was Sir George Bernard Shaw who said, and I've quoted this in a previous webinar, the only golden rule is there is no rule. Yes, we can have frameworks, but we shouldn't have rules written in stone. We need to stay flexible and adapt to the changing circumstances. And if you think about it, flexibility and trust, and we talked a lot about trust in the previous webinar, so I'm not going to go back in today, but flexibility and trust, they are the engines that drive a team. And the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us that if you trust your people to get on with their work and give them the tools and the latitude to do it, we can all deliver for the collective benefit of the organization, even working from a remote location. But it's important equally to appreciate, and it's very important to appreciate this comment. Flexibility doesn't mean you work less. It just means you work differently and more suitable to your own personal circumstances, complementing that then in the context of the desire and objectives and vision of the business you work for. Everyone in an organization or business certainly has a responsibility to promote an inclusive team culture. And yes, in terms of managing change, it can be difficult to implement as people by their nature quite often, they're often resistant to change and they will impede new ways of doing things. However, to succeed, the underlying culture of the business of the organization must be responsive to change. And culture is central to behavior and is a key determinant in the performance of an organization and in its ability to achieve its objectives. We talked about this last week, so I'm not going to go into it today, or 2 weeks ago. Suffice to say, in my experience, once you decide to change, you've got to move with pace. In terms of artificial intelligence, it's fair to say that through machine learning, it is becoming a key part of human development, and it will change the way we live and the way we work. You can see it at present, even with our more digital watches, and I see a lot of young people wearing these, we call them at present, telling them how well they slept last night or how they're getting on. And all that. It's becoming more and more important to helping life, and it will play a significant and growing role within the business environment. And it will cause disruption to many sectors, including tourism and hospitality. But it won't necessarily destroy jobs. This is always the conclusion: it'll take away jobs. It won't. It could well do the tasks that Labour are currently doing, but then Labour will find new tasks to complement it. So I believe there will be an exciting future to those who embrace change, and that artificial intelligence will result in new combinations of work talent and indeed skill requirement, work relationships, and indeed new currently unknown jobs we don't know about yet. But softer business skills, new thinking, continuous improvement, and curiosity will continue to be important and differentiating factors. You think about it, the robots need to be retooled, they need to be redesigned, need to be designed by somebody. There will still be a need for people. And interestingly, a recent international business survey confirmed that 80% of businesses today believe that talent, not technology, talent is the main threat to growth. Personally, I share that view. And that's why we endeavor to recruit and retain the brightest and the best. Because to be honest with you, in our experience, and I don't know about your experience, but our experience is that a small team of A+ players can run rings around a large team of B and C. Think about that. So managing talent, fundamental. It's vital to connect with people, create the conversations that give people confidence and empower them. There's an old Indian saying, and again, I suggest you think about this. Show me, and I may not remember. Tell me, and I may forget. But hopefully involve me, and I will understand. Certainly in the current environment, you want staff to be warriors and everybody to be a salesperson. That's back to that internal communications, the ambassadors for your organization. And certainly in our case, one of the things we measure is staff absenteeism. And our last year was year ending 31 March 2020. And our level of absenteeism, we're always looking to compare against the norm to see some of our people policies working, because to be honest with you, all we do is sell time, and if people aren't available to work, then we're losing money and we're paying them. So it's really important. Also, the retraining of staff can be very expensive. So staff retention is also very important, but low absenteeism is as well. So one other thing I'd say, that it surprises me now and again when I hear people jealous of competitors. I have to say that hasn't been my experience. My experience is that we should learn from others, because the success of others should be a source of inspiration and not a source of fear. And again, if I take you outside Northern Ireland for a second, just to highlight that point of purpose, I don't want to pick anyone in Northern Ireland. If you go to Kinsale and Cork, whenever a few of the restaurants opened 20 years ago, there was a whole lot of crying, saying, "Oh, we're going to lose business, too much competition." But actually, that competition gave rise to more and more restaurants and created a brand for food in the area that people went and stayed in with the different restaurants each evening. And that's certainly happening in Northern Ireland, I must say, and I'm delighted to see it. So I think, to be fair, business, like life, is just a game of inches. In either game, life or business, the margin for error is so small. And thus a united team with a common vision and purpose is required to deliver sustainable, superior performance and aggressive growth for your organization. We come back to a point we referred to earlier on, the power of one. Working together, everybody achieves more. Thus, certainly in our own organization, we seek that inch of improvement, both as individuals and as a collective team, in order to deliver marginal gains, recognizing that 100 things done 1% better will deliver cumulative, sustainable, competitive advantage. And collective character is vital to success. Certainly in our own organization, and certainly in many organizations I observe, that we believe that by focusing on getting the culture right, including diversity, the results will follow. We seek to encourage and deliver leaders at all levels throughout our practices and our various offices, recognizing, and think about this again in your own organization, that the being of team begins from inside. Remember, ambassadors or assassins, your staff are. High standards must come from within, and leadership works best when the team takes the lead, not necessarily the individual, the team. Certainly we're not perfect. We've all made tons of mistakes. Our commitment and our perseverance will not be perfect. However, we are going to have setbacks and stumbles in pursuing any goal we set in most cases. However, if you think about it, the important thing is not that we have these setbacks, but how we react to them. And that's why we look at some of the most successful business people or sports people. They've had major setbacks before they ultimately achieve success. And perseverance and resilience, it doesn't mean perfection. It's not often constant, unwavering adherence to a commitment. I would suggest instead, it's usually a series of quick course corrections when you get off track. And that running a business is a bit like navigating a ship. It may go slightly off course, but with small corrective actions, we can redirect the business back onto its desired direction and forward journey. As I've said before, there's many parallels, I believe, between sport and business. Shane Lowry here, holding up the Clark jug after he won the British Open at Royal Portrush. But whatever it is, the core principles are the same. It's all about getting results through people. Similarly, in his bestseller book, you've heard me refer to him, I'm going to refer him again shortly, Andy McNulty, he highlights that the biggest waste in life is the waste of potential. And he talks about the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. The fixed mindset where nothing's ever going to change. If you have people with a fixed mindset in your organization, they can be a cancer. You really need to lance that boy, to be honest with you, give them a chance, and if they don't take it, out. You can't run an organization with, in my view, a fixed or negative mindset. And then you have people with a growth mindset, what he describes as full of possibility, and they redefine failure and go again. So I'm equally glad to highlight, to support some of my arguments today, that recent research carried out by Accenture just at the end of 2020, which surveyed more than 3,200 C-suite executives in the world and 15,600 workers. They found that where organizations double down on their effort to care for their people, they will fare better when the COVID-19 crisis causing less of a blow to their bottom line. So they fared better in the COVID-19 crisis, and they believe the empirical evidence is there to suggest they'll also fare better post the COVID-19 crisis. And the research found that 62% of workers, think about this, it's easy to apply to your organization, are concerned, certainly in the current environment, about their job security and are reassessing their priorities. But the research confirmed that if an employee feels they are net better off during their time with an employer, it can help them realize up to 2/3 of their potential. So what it's saying is, if they feel that, they can actually perform far better for their employer. And this led to them developing what's called, this is very recent, the net better off model. And what this says is that the model spans 6 measurements, including emotional and mental, relational, physical, financial, purposeful, and employment. The model recognizes that people cannot perform to their full potential if they are stressed, lonely, under financial pressure, in poor mental or physical health, or lacking a sense of purpose in their work. So everyone must know what is the purpose, and we'll come back to that at the very end. Last slide. To be effective, we would suggest employers need to provide training and upskilling as well as rewards and benefits packages, which will encompass initiatives that support their employees' physical and mental health. Now, I referred to Enda McNulty earlier, and here he is with Joe Smith. Again, those of you who know Joe Smith is Ireland's most successful rugby coach, and during his time, Enda McNulty was closely alongside him as a sports psychologist and high performance manager. And basically, if you think about during Joe Smith's reign as Irish manager, when from an Irish rugby perspective, all records, new records were achieved, both in terms of Triple Crowns, Grand Slams, beating New Zealand, etc. What his motto was that basic excellence, everyone, every time, was a culture. So think about that. Basic excellence, everyone, every time. So whatever you do, whatever your role in your business or your organization, the culture has to be that everyone at this moment or at the moments in the future are trying to be the best they can be. That requires a phenomenal culture, but it does produce the right results, but it takes time to do that. And to be fair to McNulty, he then from that, I think, developed what he calls his employee value proposition, because he's an advisor to many of the top businesses, indeed on the island, but around the world. He's a very highly sought global business guru in terms of developing teams and culture. And what he said was, we look at this pyramid, at the bottom, yes, you have compensation and benefits, and that's the initial competitive advantage. But thereafter, starts to drive the value up the pyramid. At the experimental level, you're talking about people's career paths. Nobody gives them a job. Now they want to know, what is their career path? Where can I be in 3, 6, 1, 2? Allowing for. You can never plan for COVID-19. Allowing for circumstances outside the control of the business. And well-being. And really, he highlights those as differentiating factors. And remember, we've said here today that one of the key factors to your business success is attracting, developing, and retaining. So retaining is very important. So that's, he's saying, is very important to differentiating your business solution in terms of a product or service. But finally, he believes the most important factor that ultimately gives you uniqueness in terms of your business success is in terms of your employees' emotional satisfaction, which is the purpose. Remember that young girl at the start? That's why I used it. Anna May Fitzpatrick, who, to be honest with you, I'd never met before, never spoke to until this morning. Never met her before. But remember, whenever I asked her what she did, and she told me, I could see the passion, the enthusiasm coming out, not only for what she did, but for what her and her colleagues did together in order to put on the Riverdance show. That's the emotion, that's the uniqueness, that's the purpose. I'm not going to bore you here, but certainly we have found that employee benefits are very important, and they've changed dramatically in our organization over the years. I mean, certainly some of the things here, I'm not going to bore you, but probably the most significant one we have, and we never thought it, only was responding to somebody getting a puncture one night very late at night in the dark. We introduced a 24/7 breakdown service in the UK and Ireland for employees. That's probably one of our most, believe it or not, that's far more important, far more higher level of satisfaction than our various life policies, group policies, etc. We've certainly also introduced Respond to COVID-19, where we used to help employees out with gym membership. We pulled all that back and went into actually virtual across our 5 offices. An organization called Primal Fitness, who do fitness, but they do yoga and they also do Pilates, etc. And again, we have found that has proved very popular with our staff. You know, equally, you'll recognize quite a few of those, but again, it's fair to say one of the things we've done for the past 29 years, we have never organized a business event for a leaving person or anything else that we don't invite spouses or partners. Funny, could be wrong, but we're trying to create that family atmosphere at all times. Other people would argue that's wrong, that work and home should be separate. Personally, I'm the opposite. I don't believe you can turn off the clock. I believe if you need to go to a child sports day or whatever, you just go to it. But equally, it may well be that some night you're working at home, even though you're at home. You just make sure you find time and balance both. Certainly we do, and I encourage you to do your client feedback or customer feedback. We utilize a thing called the Net Promoter Score. Again, it's very objective. We Fern Nottingham coordinate the results, and thankfully, these type of policies I'm suggesting to you so far, and there's plenty of hiccups in the way, but so far the trend over recent years has been that our Net Promoter Score has kept growing. It's currently, the last survey was in 2019, because 2020 it was deferred due to COVID. It happens in March each year. So we're debating whether we run with it this year or not. I think we do need to run, because I think we can't take a 2-year break. In terms of achieving our goals, I explained to you we adopt that entrepreneurial operating system. It's in a book by a guy called Gino Wickman. I happened to go to a leadership international conference in Montreal. He happened to be the guest speaker, and 7 years ago, he's written a book called Traction, which I strongly recommend to you if you want to get a grip of your own business. And I referred to that one pager, which is part of that whole system. And certainly we have annual performance indicators, KPIs. We found that one of the real motivational factors for our team has been over the last 5-6 years, we've moved to a 90-day clock, and we have rocks in 90 days. We find it's easier to take decisions on the 90-day clock. And I suppose we try to practice to deliver. That is, we don't practice to practice. We don't practice for the sake of, if we're practicing to try and improve the outputs and the benefits and the experiences of which hopefully clients or customers will achieve. We believe if we all, your organization, if we all desire and ultimately deliver excellence, the sustainability of our businesses will take care. Because if you remember, we've said before in previous webinars, the fittest will survive. So just some concluding comments on culture and team. Authentic leadership is what gives an organization its vision and translates that vision into reality. Leadership should be at all levels, but there must be consistency of message and adherence to standards. I would suggest to you that the key qualities are humility and inspiration. Because if we want to inspire our team, then we must first inspire ourselves and endeavour to work a little more on the business. And that's what we mean by culture and team. Success breeds success. We should celebrate our achievements, have staff belief and confidence in the growing competence of the collective team, And it's acknowledged that when a team outgrows individual performances and learns team confidence, excellence becomes a reality. So in conclusion, I hope I've been able to convince you of the concept of clear standards incorporating the 3 Ps, purpose, people, and practice. And as previously said, I do believe that people will never remember what you said, or indeed did. However, they will remember how you made them feel. If I speak to you 20 years after you left school, you'll not remember much of what you taught, but you'll remember quite often that one moment that you felt a teacher didn't make you feel appropriately. Certainly from our own perspective, earning money and generating profits has never been our sole priority. And I regularly ask my PKF-FPM colleagues to pause, stop, and try and test this out with some of your firms or organizations, some of your businesses. And ask them, why are we working? Why are you working for us? What are you trying to achieve? Back to purpose. And I'd suggest because our passion and purpose is to care and to help others to achieve their life's dreams and aspirations, that through this you earn trust. Trust of both your existing customers and indeed the word gets around prospective customers. So we believe that ties into our first priority, being the health and well-being. Certainly it has come to the paramount, the forefront now with health in the past. The health and well-being of our staff linked to our employee brand, to be the fittest we can be, and therefore we think that will ultimately deliver, excellence for us in the workplace. Yes, we endeavour to work together with a common and a united goal to ensure we have fun. You must have fun in making our business the same as your business. It should be all our desire, the best it can be. So at the end of a talk on culture and team, I suggest to you it should be onwards and upwards. And with that, thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to pass over to Patricia now, and maybe along with my colleague Teresa Campbell, who's our People and Culture Director, we can take some of your questions. Over to you, Patricia.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Feargal. As always, lots and lots to think about today. And I suppose I'll just remind everyone that, as usual, we'll be sharing a recording of today's session with you all, so you can review that again at your leisure. As Feargal says, he always has a lot of information on those slides there, so it's always worth maybe going back and having a second look. We'll save a copy of the slides themselves up for you as well, so you could have those in front of you and have a little bit of a look at those as well. As promised, I'll also be sharing some of your questions with Feargal very shortly. So if you have any questions and you haven't shared them just yet, just go ahead and enter them in the questions section in your webinar control panel now, and I'll try and get through some of those this morning. Just before we get stuck into those, I'm going to do a couple of very quick polls just so we can get a feel for how useful you found today's session so far. So the first one should pop up on your screen just any minute now, and it's how would you rate today's session in terms of content and relevance to your business? So that's on a scale of 1 to 5. I'll just give you guys a wee second to fill that in. Okay, and we've got a little second poll here. This is very easy, yes or no. It's just simply, do you plan to take some action within your business as a direct result of what you've heard from Feargal so far today? So just simply yes or no. That's a really good help for us and means that we're on the right track with all these sessions, and we're really grateful to you guys for coming along and listening this morning. Your feedback really is so useful for us. I know I say this all the time, but we just want to be sure we're continuing to deliver the topics that you guys really need. So you will be, as usual, receiving a little link to a feedback form after today's session, and really appreciate if you can take a few minutes to complete that when you have a moment. So now it's my great pleasure to welcome back Feargal, and we're joined also by his colleague Teresa Campbell from PKF-FPM. So I'll just check if we've got Teresa there as well with us. I can see Feargal there. Feargal, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly, yes.
Okay. I just don't see Teresa just at the moment. I'm wondering maybe she's had a technical issue, so we'll maybe go ahead and just get started here, and hopefully Teresa will pop up in a minute or two there. Okay. I'm going to kick off, Feargal. We have you know, some staff have been at home on furlough for sort of an extended period of time at this stage, and of course there's lots of difficulties that have come with COVID-19, but they're having at home with social hours, as we all know. So would you have any advice on how employers could encourage staff and ready to rock, you know, after maybe a long period on furlough?
Well, I think there's no magic formula, to be fair, Patricia, and I slightly may have missed some of your question and there was a bit of a breakage in the technology, but I think if I picked it up correctly, it was the concept of furlough and the availability of staff and new conditions coming back, and perhaps work-life balance that people have experienced in recent times. Look, I think there's no industry more than tourism and hospitality that knows the importance of staff, and the part-time staff and seasonal staff and full-time staff. And I think that, you know, at the end of the day, it is important that you build up a rapport with your staff. I think staff, personally, in my view, will respect those who were transparent and open with them during the lockdown and continue to be. People realize that this is very difficult for business owners as well. And I think that in differentiating yourself by taking that little bit of extra effort, I'm glad to see Teresa's joined us now, by taking that little bit of extra effort to try and stay in contact with staff. And in fact, I think staff will appreciate that, and that will become a differentiating factor when they decide, do they want to stay with your organization. I think the second part of your question is a little bit more difficult, and only time will tell. I think there is a belief within the sector that some staff, having experienced being at home a lot more weekends than they may otherwise have been, and having maybe a different experience of work-life balance, may be reluctant to commit to continuous unsocial hours. And therefore, I think there may well need to be a greater mix of staff, and that does come then back to availability. And one of the areas that may become a challenge, and is yet to be known, is that will Brexit impact upon the availability of some non-resident potential employees? I think that's all up for grabs. But in the first instance, I would strongly suggest that looking after your staff, yes, some may abuse it, but keeping in regular contact during these difficult days, I think when things get back to normal and we're running our businesses, I believe the staff won't forget them.
Great. Thank you so much, Feargal. Hi, Teresa. Can you hear us now?
Yes, sorry about that. I lost all sound. So first time ever on a webinar, it completely crashed. Feargal, I heard your last slide, and then Patricia, I lost you completely. So apologies.
Oh,
I'll log back.
no,
I'll come back.
no worries at all. Just to prove we're really here.
She lost me. Go ahead.
Teresa, we have had a question in from someone who was looking for some advice on how can they manage staff retention after they reopen and just keep encouraging team motivation. They were wondering, should they bring staff back part-time, or what would you recommend? Would you have any thoughts on that, Teresa?
Yeah, sure, Patricia. And I suppose it goes back right down to the essence of what Feargal was talking about throughout his presentation in terms of, even in these challenging times, communication with your team is so important. And certainly we're seeing those businesses are doing that at the moment, even with staff off on furlough. Even just those informal social events, a quiz or whatever that might be, just to keep in contact with your staff. I suppose in relation to the plans to reopen, no doubt a lot of businesses will have a lot of planning to do that, particularly in trying to secure advanced bookings. And of course, it's important to have resources in place to do that. So certainly, yes, in line with government guidelines and being able to bring staff back part-time is certainly something that businesses should consider. And I suppose it's even listening to those staff and engaging those staff with the plans for reopening and with the plans to get advanced bookings and new business. So certainly we find that by involving your team and listening to their suggestions, it gets their passion up, and ultimately they feel part of the team, and certainly that can only bring good things in terms of staff retention going forward.
Absolutely, that's absolutely super. I mean, I think Feargal, there was so much information in there that everyone's absorbing it all. So we don't have too many questions today, but I suppose that thing that I kind of wanted to touch back on is that sort of caring for your staff yields benefits, and I suppose that's linking in with what you're saying there, Teresa, as well, in terms of, stay in touch with them even now, even when they're off on furlough. Don't feel like it's just we'll give you a call the day before we want you to come back, but it's kind of that, really caring for your staff, checking in on them, and sort of keeping the culture of your business and the ethos of your business ingrained in everybody throughout all of this. Would that be right?
Absolutely, Patricia. I think it's so important, and even just the picking up the phone or knowing that maybe somebody lives on their own and might be lonely, and having those, how are you? Not talking about business and not talking about, but just like, how are you getting on? Is there anything you need? We find that those businesses who are doing that, the staff will be completely committed to them and will really value those conversations.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Feargal.
Yeah, interesting. That research I was quoting, I think, was from Accenture. It's just actually completed, I think, towards the end of 2020. I think I'm right in recalling it from that research. It concluded, which was an amazing statistic, that two-thirds of businesses who were acknowledged for caring for their staff above the normal were yielding higher performance results. That's a phenomenal statistic in terms of the current, where the limiting factor to business is quite often not turnover, not technology, but actually talent. Well, I mean, that's a no-brainer. We have to look after our staff better. But equally, not for the sake of looking after them, for the sake of the desired vision and common purpose and output of the organization, that by working together, it's better for everyone, including the staff's future job prospects and job stability.
Absolutely, and people actually enjoying coming to work is always a bonus, and I think that comes across even with, especially in tourism and hospitality. The visitor will be able to tell if someone is really happy and passionate in their work, and it all kind of translates through. Thank you so much to both of you. I suppose I want to remind everyone as well, once again, with this session, we'll be offering a limited number of short one-to-one follow-up calls with Feargal and the team. So if based on what you've heard today, you'd like to request one of these callbacks, you can just drop me an email at industry.development@tourismandI.com. Just include your name, company, and if you have a specific question or area that you'd really like to chat to the team about, and I'll be happy to pass your details on to these guys to follow up with you directly. So some really useful resources for you guys, and I know we've had fantastic feedback from everyone that's had a chat with you so far. So I just think a great opportunity. If you haven't taken us up on that and you're on today's call, do feel free to drop me an email, and I'll be happy to pass your details on. Also, just a reminder, if you head to covid19.tourismandI.com and head to our support centre, you can find recordings from all of our previous TED webinars on the previous webinars tab, and we'll aim to be getting the recording up from today online very, very soon. We've also got some other TED webinars open for registration. You know, we're always releasing new dates, so do check the upcoming webinar section while you're there as well. The People series is continuing over the next couple of weeks. We're going to be looking at COVID-19 and Brexit in the context of your staff and your people, so worth tuning into those. And also Feargal and some of his team of experts are going to be joining us again next Tuesday to take a look at the impact of Brexit on our industry. So I'm sure that'll be of interest to an awful lot of you. So if you haven't done so already, be sure to get your name down for that one. So I think that's really us for today. Thank you so much, guys. Technical issues and all, we're all still standing. And look forward to seeing you again at the next one. And thanks also to everyone who's joined us here this morning. Thanks a lot. Cheerio. Bye, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.